Welcome back, YouTubers. Today I will be talking about Hamlet, and very specifically I will be talking about a literary theory called New Criticism, and talking about very specific scenes in the play Hamlet. So, to start off, Michael Neal, quoting Vsevolod Meyerhold, a Russian director of plays, writes in his A Modern Perspective of Hamlet that if all the plays ever written suddenly disappeared, and only Hamlet miraculously survived, all the theaters in the world would be saved. Unquote. I am not going to disagree with the Russian director, but I will say that I'm sure, I'm sure a lot of women will be upset with this new arrangement, as they will be relegated to just Gertrude and Ophelia. However, Hamlet is one of the most overly done plays, and its ability to change its facade makes it perpetual. So, keeping this in mind, I'd like to discuss the clarity, or lack thereof, in this play, along with tending to its paradoxes, ironies, and most of all, its conflict. This video essay can work on many levels for those studying Hamlet, from the ages of 12 and above. I read this play twice, and wrote about it twice in high school, and in 2 separate classes in grad school, and I taught the play for several years. In this specific video essay, like I mentioned before, I will be simply talking about one of the literary critical approaches, called New Criticism, which actually came about in the 1940s, so it's not all that new anymore. But it is one of the easiest ones to use and when writing a paper on Hamlet, and it's also probably one of the most widespread and used the most, that is. Or if you're, you could also just use it, if you're having a simple debate with someone at, let's say, a pub or cafe, a lover's funeral, wedding of your mother to your uncle, graveyard, looking at skulls, duels, pirate ships, and of course, simply traveling along the road of life. To be clear or not to be clear, that is the question. For only in the mind can we truly understand what we're getting at or where we're going. And the question is, whose mind that is? Our own, our very own. We can't share with someone else, and so no matter what happens, this postmodern absurdity of all this thinking and drama we call life is simply a finite solitude. However, the moment in which we convey all that thinking and drama, and it all becomes a word or words, we touch the listener or the reader, and for a few brief seconds or moments, that connection dispels our emptiness, or the emptiness. In Lois Tyson's Critical Theory Today, a standard reader for undergrads and grad students alike, she outlines the basis of New Criticism, and that it is a, quote, complexity of the text, created by the multiple and often conflicting meanings woven through it. 4 kinds of linguistic devices: paradox, irony, ambiguity, and tension, unquote. All come together and we achieve a balance of some sort. So these four items, these 4 motifs, literary devices, are necessary in order to use New Criticism as a theory to analyze any piece of work, whether it is a play, a novel, a poem, and whatnot. Fiction, right? So let's start with paradox. Hamlet must act insane and convince those around him that he is this way, that he is actually insane, in order to investigate the best possible way to exact revenge for the death of his father. And even though he's very morose in the very beginning of the play, and you can see that he's morose at his mother's wedding, he's dressed in black, everybody else is happy that there's a wedding, he is very despondent. It isn't until he actually sees his father, sees the ghost of his father, and is convinced to exact his revenge that he begins to mull over what he needs to do in order to actually finish his vengeance against Claudius. And in the process of doing so, he feels betrayed by Ophelia, by his mother, Gertrude. Ophelia being his girlfriend, is his actual lover, someone who he most likely have even had a child with. There's evidence that she could have been pregnant, and that maybe that's for another video. But it's a very depressing state of affairs, and so he has to pretend. He chooses to be mad, so that way he can move in and around the castle or the environs and not draw attention to the fact that he's indeed set on killing his uncle Claudius. So this is a paradox. And quote, "Thus conscience does make cowards of us all," unquote. And that's from Act 3, Scene 1, verse 91. His reluctance, or conscience as he calls it, to avenge in a swiftly manner means that he's a coward. He feels he's a coward. He's taking the burden upon himself. The meaning of this is really that haste behavior shows a lack of thinking and leads to moral ambiguity. Ambiguity, remember, was one of the 4 linguistic devices that Tyson mentioned. We can never really know for certain whether or not Hamlet is actually playing at being mad in order to trick those around him, or if his father's death has actually made him crazy. So that's, food for thought, right? And the reason why I say this is because there are times throughout this play that Hamlet talks to the audience. Hamlet has an aside with the audience, or he's talking with his friend Horatio, or he's talking with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, his fake friends, and we don't know for certain whether or not he's actually insane. There is a moment when he is talking to Polonius, and he's talking about being like a crab, and whatnot, that possibly he is actually sane, because Polonius is even confused by this, and the most actors usually play him as being just faking it in that scene. But let's move on. He makes many meaningful statements along the way, but Shakespeare might have intended this. An example, quote, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." And that's from Act 1, Scene 5, verses 187 to 188. Ambiguity, again, keeps the mystery alive, and this is definitely one of the major themes in the play, mystery. It's a mystery of whether or not Hamlet's crazy. It's a mystery of, is it really irony that happens in the play, that takes place, that provides, the meat of the play? Is there really true ambiguity? And finally, the tension. Well, the tension is fairly real, especially at the end when we have the dueling scene. But Shakespeare writes this play in a very philosophical way in order for us to take the moments, the deep, the more profound moments, and apply those to our lives. Indeed, there are more things in heaven and earth that are dreamt of in our philosophy, are trite. No matter how deep we are, and no matter how important that we think we are, the universe is much bigger than we are, and the actions of other people have ripple effects that affect us, and therefore life is truly a mystery. Which brings us to irony. Hamlet is filled with irony, the play itself, that is, and no other part better than when the young Hamlet overhears his uncle Claudius pray to God to save his soul for the murder he has committed. So Hamlet catches Claudius in the act. Claudius is kneeling down, he's begging for forgiveness. Now, at the time, when you think about it, when this play is actually set, this play would have been set well before the Protestant age. So Claudius is having a direct conversation with God, not having a conversation with a priest. And that's interesting if you really think about it, because Claudius is such a coward that he can't be absolved of his sin. He doesn't want to be absolved. He wants God to know that there's a part of him that wants to be forgiven, but he ultimately doesn't want to say, hey, yes, forgive me for this, okay? And there are many ways of looking at this. And maybe in another video I can get into the reasons why Claudius killed his brother. Not just because he wanted Gertrude. There are military reasons that are hinted at. There are political reasons that are hinted at. There are probably economic reasons that are hinted at. But here's Hamlet, already someone who knows how to soul search, who does this, on a day-to-day basis, is looking at his uncle soul searching, and he can't do it. He can't bring himself down to the level that Claudius has put himself in. So Hamlet by now has seen his uncle's guilt, and after staging the play, he staged Mousetrap, which was, to bring out the conscience of the king, so to speak, and he wanted to see Claudius's face, to know that Claudius was guilty of it. He didn't want to take the ghost just for his word. He needed evidence. He's an empiricist, Hamlet. So he feels he has, internally and mentally, the wherewithal now to exact his revenge. Alas, though, he catches Claudius in prayer, and so he feels, although able to carry out this murder ultimately, he's unable to do so in that very specific moment because his uncle is still praying. So here's where the irony comes into play now. Hamlet leaves. He says, okay, well, I can't do anything about this now. And Claudius stops praying. He doesn't realize that Hamlet's no longer there, but he stops praying. And he states emphatically, quote, "My words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go." Act 3, Scene 4, verses 102 to 103. So Claudius is refusing to confess his sin to God. Ultimately, he's refusing to do so, like I mentioned before. And Hamlet, choosing to be good and not kill Claudius while he prays, juxtaposes the two characters. What one can do and what one can't do. Claudius further descends into this ruthless behavior, even more so, right? He gets Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to trail him, to figure out what's going on, and eventually this leads to the moment when Hamlet confronts his mother, Gertrude, and tries to convince her that her husband, Claudius, is a very evil man. And we see Gertrude change. We see her realize that her husband is evil. And she finally wakes up from whatever that it is that she was under the spell of, and she takes her son's side finally. But then Hamlet hears that rustling behind the tapestry or the curtain. He stabs the figure there. He thinks it was Claudius. Eavesdropping it wasn't, it was Polonius. So he kills the wrong old man. Now he kills a very crappy, stupid old man. A man who was, beyond the shadow of a doubt, a ruthless person as well. The dragon to Claudius, so to speak. But he kills his lover's father. Someone who we know that no matter how bad Polonius is, Ophelia loves her father. And Hamlet, it's possible Hamlet has, a sense of guilt at that point. But now he's going to be arrested by Claudius. Claudius now has a reason to get rid of Hamlet. So he sends him on a ship with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, along with some letters, right? And these letters will emphatically state that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are supposed to take Hamlet to England, and then England, the King of England, will hang Hamlet for the crime he's committed. So who's the coward now? Claudius can't hang him for the crime. I mean, he should be able to. He should be able to do that, but he doesn't. But luck would have it, right? There's always an ex deus machina in a Shakespearean play, and so some pirates come along, right? And they basically rescue Hamlet. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, take those letters with them to England. Of course, Hamlet by now has taken the letters and he has rewritten them so that when they get there, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern will be the ones that are hanged and not Hamlet. And Hamlet makes his way back to Denmark. He has no care at this point of whether or not his friends are going to die. Of course, they're fake friends. We understand that. They're just tools, they're plot devices. But there we go. The single point of irony can take the entire play and bind it in a nutshell. All the actions of the doomed characters lead them to untimely deaths, and all because they never seem to react when it is of the utmost importance. After the scene, well, we just mentioned after all this is taking place, Hamlet is absent from Ophelia's life, and Ophelia has to suffer through the funeral of her father, and then her lover, the only person she can trust in this world, is gone, and then of course her brother Laertes is gone, and Laertes doesn't make it back, obviously, for his father's funeral in time, but he does make it back for Ophelia's funeral, because she has now committed suicide. She has gone crazy. I mean, what is she to do? And so, what happens next? There's the scene in the graveyard, and Hamlet challenges Laertes to a duel. Claudius thinks this is his one moment, right, to get rid of Hamlet. He's going to poison the blade, and Laertes is going to take out Hamlet. And it doesn't work that way, right? I mean, he realizes, the goblet's been poisoned, and so he forces Claudius to drink the poison wine, or what have you, after he notices that his mother's dead. So now we have a dead Gertrude, we have a dead Claudius, we have a dead Laertes, we have a dead Polonius, we have a dead Ophelia, we have a dead Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and now we have a dead Hamlet. And all that's left is a Horatio at the end to tell the story. And Fortinbras, who I'll mention maybe another video, the new king of Norway, who comes in and reaps the rewards of everybody's craziness. I mean, I hope this has helped you a little bit with understanding new criticism. It's really a simple literary theory. You're just going to find a paradox within a play, within a story. You're going to find whatever is ambiguous. There's always going to be something ambiguous, something that's uncertain, because these things, this paradox, the irony, the uncertainty, is what ultimately creates tension, and then the tension will be resolved through hopefully a climax, and there you have it. You have something in acts, something that takes place in waves, and this is what provides entertainment. So if you have something to add, please do so in the comment section. As before, I love to read what you think about Hamlet or about new criticism. And if you have questions, just shoot them my way. Thanks for all those who have subscribed to my channel, and if you haven't already, please do so. I'll keep on making these videos. Okay. You can always check out my blog for more stuff on art and culture and literature and music at www.jmnorman.tumblr.com. You can also, from that link, you can get to my Amazon authors page, or you can also get that through the description and the YouTube channel. That being said, I have 2 paperbacks that are already out. One is called Puddles and Memory, and the other is called The Two Brothers and Other Stories, which that one's just available in paperback right now, but Puddles and Memories is also available on Kindle too. One's a collection of flash fiction, the other one's a collection of 7 short stories. So in the words of Mr. Garrison Keillor, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.